Today is the 11th of May, 2015. The topic is the results of the Democratic Party's City Council elections on the 5th of May. My guest is Jeff Risner, incumbent of the City Council. He was not up for election this time.
Actually, I was.
You were?
Yes. I was
Well, he was
primary.
not one of the at-large. He was one. He has a safe seat. What ward is that?
Second ward.
Second ward. Okay. Well, I missed that second ward bit. And I am Robert Whaley, retired historian at Ohio University, and this is the Athens Speakout 330. And as an introduction to Jeff Risner, I met him somewhere around 2007, 2008, as Barack Obama was running for his first election. And I met him by accident in the Baker Center, and we've had 40 shows maybe, mostly about Democratic and Republican national elections. And those go back to Franklin Roosevelt in 1932. And the presidential elections influenced me as early as 1940. When Roosevelt ran the third term, I was 10 years old. My father was a Republican, and I went to the 5th grade with a Wilkie button on my shirt. My father was a true believer in the Republican Party and voted for the Republican Party from Warren G. Harding to his death with Richard Nixon. He died in the Nixon administration. But I became a defector. Anyway, Roosevelt's re-election in 1940 made it highly likely that he would have the United States intervene in World War II on the side of Great Britain. Britain was already against Adolf Hitler, and Britain and Germany had fought in World War I, that same alliance, along with Russia and France. And the 1930s, 1940s, Second World War was a repeat of the balance of power of World War I. And Germany was the center of the Central Powers, or the Axis powers, in both cases. Now, the Athens City Council race of 2015 had about 100 other cities in 88 counties also running for city council, and all the incumbents, as far as I know, whether they were Democrats or Republicans, won in these city races, and the turnout was exceedingly small. All over the state, right?
Yes.
I heard of no upsets. Did you? On the statewide
on the state level?
No, I never heard of an upset.
Nothing.
Anyway, the purpose of city council is to give young candidates and medium-age candidates a shot at the coming 2016 presidential election. They might be able to advance a peg or two. They're in the batter's box today, the winners of that is, on the various city councils. And that's the purpose of city councils, is to give amateurs experience. Now, Lenny Eliason is a county commissioner, and he's an example of maybe 1,000 county commissioners throughout the state and nation who is on a national committee of county commissioners. And this elder statesman gives advice to the young candidates who win a county commissioner's race. And that's a two-way street. He learns something about Pennsylvania county commissions, and maybe he can inform amateurs from Ohio how to do a better job. Anyway, I think we're ready for the first question. What did you learn from this campaign about the issues and the problems facing Ohio for the next November, for the general election?
Oh, we're doing some serious extrapolating here about
Okay.
some local elections in 2015 and trying to get it all the way to 2016. Well, I think it goes to the old adage that all politics is local.
I believe that.
And that's very much what you saw this time around. This is 2015. It's an off year
Right.
of elections. There's no governors, there's no senators, there's no representatives either on the state level or the national level being elected. We're dealing with local politics.
Right.
So in this case, we had city politics taking preeminence here in Athens County along with one nonpartisan issue, a levy for
And only the
children.
Republicans voted for the levy. And most of them voted no.
But it passed anyway. So,
Yeah, we had enough Democrats in the city
yes,
to win the levy for children.
right.
Have you ever met a Republican on your campaign trail and tried to convince him to be more patriotic for the children in the city? Did they ever give you any explanation?
Actually, the Republicans that I have met were in favor of the.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, I was.
You meet liberal Republicans.
Well,
relatively.
I'm talking about what I would consider the Republican Party of, I'll say, 1970 or 1980, the more pragmatic,
Right.
moderate, the type of Republican or citizen who looked at the community and said, well, there are things that need to be done,
Yeah.
and let's do those things.
Yeah.
Let's get them done, rather than a dogma that says, no, taxes are evil, and no
Right.
matter, it doesn't matter what they're for.
Right.
So, but all in all, the campaign that I ran for myself, even though I was unopposed.
You did get around to the houses in your ward?
Yes, I did. I talked with people. I wanted to find out what's on their mind, what can we do, what needs to be done. The main thing that, of course, I'm on the south side of town. This is where we're at right now. This is my ward.
I see.
And Richland Avenue takes up a big portion of people's concerns around here because it's being repaired and tore up, and there's big chunks of street missing, and it damages cars, and people are concerned about that, and businesses are being affected by it. So we're trying our best to get this thing done. But as a campaign issue, it really wasn't much of one. The main thing I think that concerns people right now as a citywide issue is things such as the improvements to the community center. You know, that people they want a new swimming pool, they want it heated, they want it open year round. That seems to be a topic. Also, in some sections of town, people are wanting more police protection. Over the past year or so, burglaries in the city have went up 100%.
I believe that.
So mainly on the west side and the north side
Right.
of town.
Right.
And
Well, that's what DeWitt writes about. Well, our favorite journalist. He writes about crime, and
right.
we had Dave DeWitt and Steve Handel had a little show on drugs, on heroin, and they pointed out how these heroin addicts commit most of the thefts.
Yes, it is.
To support themselves.
It's almost entirely drug related.
Right.
And in many cases, the victim is known by the burglar. In fact, they probably are acquaintances. They may even be family members.
Right.
But they're on drugs. They need a fix. So they steal something, and
Right.
And of course, the city has been the victim of this too. City property has been stolen and vandalized and taken.
Right.
So those are issues that all communities have. And then, of course, being a college town, we also have the what many people like to refer to as the student problem. I don't like that term. I don't like classifying people as a problem. I mean, well, or even as a question, you get back into.
Well, there is a town-gown rivalry.
There is, of course, and I understand rivalry is fine, but when you begin starting using condescension and terms that are more derogatory,
Right.
you know, like we have a problem.
Yeah.
To me, that's sort of like we're marching down the
Well,
road.
I think one of the candidates, namely Alan Swank, went out of his way to praise the students. He wrote his own little letter to the editor, and he said, the students have gotten a bad rap. They help business. Why don't we all have one community?
That's true, and I agree with that to that extent. But I don't think we should look at students as a source of income. We shouldn't be saying, we have students and let's take what we can from them.
Yeah.
You know, they're good business. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't like equating people with business either.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
they're citizens. They are residents of this town.
Right.
They are voters.
All right.
If they're 18 years old and they want to vote, by God, they have the right to vote here.
Right.
It's a shame that they don't. I mean, they
Yeah,
have
well,
there's tremendous political power there if it was ever wanted to be used. It just simply isn't.
Yeah.
And that is, I think it's a
Well, there was a
shame.
great hope in 1972 when McGovern was running, and the students all came out because they had one big issue: let's end the war. Now they're not threatened by anything
No.
except jobs, and those jobs are diverse. If you're going into accounting, you'll get a job. If you major in history, you're going to have a fight.
That's right. You'd be lucky to flip burgers, you know.
Yeah.
So it's good though that someone does mention that, you know, that there are positive things that come from the student population.
Right.
And
Right.
my ward here, second ward, I have 7,000 and some odd residents, of which at least 1,800 are students.
Right.
That's a large.
So what was the turnout in your precinct? The same as usual or particularly low?
Oh, I think overall, I think the Board of Elections said that the overall turnout countywide was about 6% of the eligible voters.
That's the way it is every off.
Well, it's been higher than that before.
It's been as high as 10.
But of course, that figure, remember, that's the county.
Yeah.
Okay, the city of Athens has, I don't know what, let's say 2,000, 3,000 eligible voters. The county has much more. The county population is over 60,000.
Right.
So most of them didn't get out to vote because there was no county issue to vote on,
Right.
other than the nonpartisan levy, which most people just sort of ignored.
Right.
Now, there were no contested county races. There was no commissioners, no sheriff. Hey, now, sheriff would have brought out some people, I'm sure. No auditor, no clerk of court, nothing. No county positions coming up. No county-wide big issue. No, should we vote on this issue or something that's going to affect it? No, nothing. So the people just stayed home. Now, within the city, there was an issue. But we're getting 6% of the county at reflecting the turnout in here. So I really can't answer your question what the actual percentage for the city was, because I haven't seen those.
Right.
We could probably, you and I, sit down and look at the voter roll of all the candidates.
Why
within the
do
city.
all of that work?
Yeah. So, but we can say that like the mayoral candidate in the primary, Steve Patterson, got over 700.
That's a courtesy vote, though.
Yeah, right.
And lots of Democrats just gave him the. His name was Patterson, Democrat.
Right.
They just voted for the label.
So let's just say that let's just round it up to 800, 800 votes, and let's postulate there's say 28 to 3,000 eligible voters. 800 into 3,000, that's what, roughly 20, 30% turnout for the city?
Yeah.
Just off the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, did you have any advice to give to the three winners in at-large contest?
Well, that was interesting how that came out. Pete Kotis
Won.
Oh, he won big.
Yeah, here are the statistics. He had 794 votes.
Citywide, at large, right?
Right, and Jennifer Cochran was
Who's
second.
an incumbent.
Jennifer Cochran got 577.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third was Joan
Kronansky.
376.
Mm-hmm.
And then the losers, Alan Swank,
Mm-hmm.
Maxine Rantain, and Mike Canterbury.
Now, Mike Canterbury was an incumbent.
Yeah, but he went down to 104.
Yeah.
He was last,
Well, that's, yeah.
and he had some baggage. People voted against
Well,
engineers,
that-
and they voted against a guy by the name of Maiden, and they voted against Stanley. This was guilt by association.
it could be. I'd hate to think that because
I don't see any other reason.
I don't know.
All I can say is guilt by association.
That did surprise me.
He got all kinds of. Well, I did hear negative votes. My wife wouldn't vote
yeah,
for him.
well, you're okay.
She wouldn't vote for for Canterbury. No consideration.
Uh-huh.
Because somebody was overpaid
Yeah. Well, look.
4 years ago.
But look at the spread between the first and the second winners, Pete and
Cochran,
Cochran. Look, that's almost 220
right?
votes.
Right.
That's quite a spread.
Well, Custis had a lot of student support. He looks young, he acts young, and he had a lot of people vote for him.
Well,
He advertised himself as a BA graduate
Yeah,
of Ohio
right,
University, history.
of course, a lot of students were gone. Most of the students
And he
were out of
looks
here.
young.
Well,
When you look at his picture, he looks younger than any of the other
well,
candidates.
certainly younger than me. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything.
His picture in the paper helped him.
I think he ran. I think he ran a very good campaign. He was out there. Like many of the others, and pretty much everyone did the same thing. He knocked on every door that he could knock on.
Good.
He passed out literature. He had yard signs everywhere, especially on the west, north, and east side. They were just blanket.
Saturated.
Oh, saturation. That's it.
Right.
And he gave some good remarks, I think, at the Women's League of Voters.
You attended that debate?
I read the transcript.
Oh, you read the transcript?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I thought that he did a good job with that. And I think he also did at the Democrat dinner, our spring dinner, all candidates were given an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. You were there. And I thought he did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
That was sort of an introduction, way to get the ball rolling. And I think he sort of got things fired up.
Did you vote for him first? Was he your first choice?
Well, I had my choices.
You voted for the three winners? Or did you guess one of them?
No, I came up pretty good, didn't I? For once.
Good.
I was, in particular, supporting the incumbent Jennifer Cochran and Joan Kronansky, because I've known Joan for many, many years.
Right.
And she's a very outspoken person, but very knowledgeable.
Right.
She doesn't say things just to be heard. When she says something, you can be sure there's an encyclopedia of information to back up that statement.
Yeah.
And I think that's really necessary in any type of public office. You just simply can't have people that go in there and give a good speech and have nothing to back it up.
Right.
You know, if they give out numbers and you challenge those numbers and you say, well, I'm not quite sure. I don't think that number's. Where did you get that number? Oh, well, I've read it somewhere. Well, I prefer someone to say, I got it from the U.S. Census Bureau.
She has facts.
These facts. Here's the facts. Facts speak for themselves.
Right.
You know, so.
Right.
Okay. I think that's what we need. But in this case, we had 6 people that I thought all of them were
Competent. All of them
competent.
And every one of them were against fracking.
that helps. Though I think a few more than others, but. So it was a tough choice, and it's awful. You have to make choices like that.
Well, I added up the recorded total of those who voted were 2,462.
Mm-hmm.
Then I added up the numbers, and that was 2,447. So there were about 40 votes where people lumped them together. In other words, they voted for one man themselves.
Yes.
And they said, well, I'm not going to vote for the others because those votes are only going to count against me.
Well,
That's what you call strategy.
Oh, I see. It's a good point. Yeah.
My wife lost a race that way.
Oh.
My wife was number 4 in a 3-man contest.
Uh-huh.
And the number, the lady just ahead of her, this is school board. This was
school board,
20 years ago.
Okay.
The school board incumbent was a lady by the name of Blanche Dawn, and she decided to quit the race. Well, she should have announced that publicly. Said, don't vote for Blanche Dawn because she's no longer on the ticket. So there were more people who voted for a non-candidate than voted for Lois, and she didn't make it.
That's too bad.
Lack of advertising, lack of strategy, lack of planning.
Yeah, that does happen.
So I was thinking of this, how many people figured that strategy ahead of time? Well, not many.
Yeah.
It was only about 40 votes difference, and that didn't make any difference. If Custis had 40 friends out there, they needed 200 to make any difference.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that was quite a
So
spread there.
strategy was unnecessary. Yeah, there were 48 votes difference between the recorded vote and adding up the possible totals. So you voted for the three winners, more or less in the same order, and it would only be picking. Now I voted wrong because I voted for Alan Swank. I voted for Cochran, Swank, and Custis. So I was wrong on one candidate, and I was wrong in the prestige, the order. I put Cochran 1, Swank 2, and Custis 3. But that didn't make any difference.
No.
These were just
the
personal
thing,
preferences.
Yeah, the thing with this election was it's just the top three.
Yeah.
That's
right.
all it means.
That's right.
Now, of course, now we have three candidates in the Democrat Party who will be coming up in November against Republican candidates and independent candidates.
Yeah.
So now we're going to have to run this whole thing all over again. And again, it will be whoever gets the top number of votes, the top three out of this new pool
Right.
that's coming up.
So you think one Republican will sneak in? Or you think three Democrats will beat three Republicans?
I think three.
Are there three Republican candidates?
No, I don't.
Only two?
Only two, but there's an independent.
The independent, McGee.
Pat McGee.
He's going with our friend Bernie Sanders. He told me he's going to put 50.
So he's going to run as a socialist?
He might.
That'd be interesting.
Why are you an independent?
Well, because there's no socialist party in Ohio.
Well, he works with the down and outs. You know,
Yeah.
he gets a salary working for the people who get caught with
A
marijuana.
public defender, yeah, right. But he's an attorney, which
He
would,
gives him some.
well, it certainly would add something.
He'll get some student vote.
Yeah, it'll
He'll
add
have a lot
something
of. He'll
to,
have a lot of strength in the students.
Right. So, and I was on a jury where he was the defense attorney.
Did he do a good job?
He did a phenomenal job. He won the case.
Wow.
It should have been a slam dunk for the prosecution, but he tore him to shreds.
Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
I didn't know anything about him.
Yeah. It was a while ago, but it was
Yeah,
very
amazing.
dramatic.
Amazing.
I don't know anything about the Republicans except their students.
Right.
I don't know really their platform or anything.
Right.
Or if they have one.
Well, let's talk something about the news endorsements. They endorsed Jennifer Cochran as number one, and that was the incumbent safe thing to do. Being an incumbent, experience always counts.
It helps.
Right. And now Terry Smith, for some reason, was a little bit skeptical on the zoning question. He's got some kind of a little private hang-up that has never been explained to me. Why is he suspicious of Joan Krasinski's zoning work? Is there some kind of real estate interest there? That's beyond me.
The only thing I can think of was some years ago, I think about 20 years ago, 25, there was a project out on the west side near the West End Tavern for some apartments to be built out there, and I remember Joan being opposed to it, but her reasoning I thought was valid. her concept of zoning and for the city is that a city should not just simply zone or permit piecemeal, that there should be some overall plan that guides people.
Right.
And she said, in the absence of such a plan, why are we approving all these projects?
Right.
Because all you're doing is it's just a piecemeal patchwork type of thing. That was her thing. Now maybe in concept she may have been all completely in favor of that. Okay,
Right.
good idea. This is it. But there's no plan. There's nothing here.
Right.
And her idea, and what I've talked with her many times, is I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she likes the idea that there would be not just what we call the comprehensive plan for Athens, that already exists, but a comprehensive plan of development, zoning, and building.
Yeah.
And that's really lacking. Right now things come along, and I'm a developer, and I say, I want to develop something here, and the zone is a such and such zone, and I qualify to build there, and the Office of Code Enforcement and so on says, well, okay. They sign off, that's it.
Right.
We have no objection to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could have been.
Yeah.
It could have been one of the reasons. But if it is, I mean, you're stretching back 25 years to find something?
Right.
That seems a little, anyway.
Well, some people have long memories.
I guess so.
Right.
Zoning's always a touchy issue around here.
Yeah. Yeah.
The idea it seems to be that I have property and I should be allowed to do whatever I choose to do with it.
Right. That's free enterprise.
Well, the trouble is that doesn't exist in the real world.
Well, as you have to put sewers in, and you have to put electric lights in, and you have fracking problems.
Mm-hmm. Well, for example,
you got to balance the power.
right? Okay. I mean, we have all kinds of different zones set up in the city. We have residential, we have business, we have manufacturing, we even have educational. We have a special E zone.
Right.
That's what OU falls into.
Yeah.
Now you can have people who say, "Well, I would like to open up a tannery."
Right.
Now, do you want one next door? Okay. Well, let's even get something even a little sillier than that.
Well, there was a big fight about this gentleman's club. Shall we
Yes.
have naked dancing in Athens?
Well, yes, but let's look at what happened with that. And that, I believe, the Board of Zoning Appeal was an error. And in fact, the state of Ohio and the federal court said they were. They made a mistake. That at that time, the land that would have been set on was in fact zoned properly. And there was no other restrictions that you could really apply. Yet it was voted down anyway.
Okay.
And that's why the lawsuits came about, and the state and the feds said, yes, the city of Athens, you definitely are in error. Now remember, the Board of Zoning Appeal, the BZA, is a quasi-governmental office. They have judicial powers, legislative powers. And when they make a decision, it's a decision.
Right.
Well, if they make it an error, they've made an error. But that error still goes through. And then it has to be appealed in the courts if you so desire. And that's what happened. It went, and eventually it was settled.
Yeah. The Supreme Court of Ohio took the case?
No, the federal court.
The federal court?
Cincinnati.
Went all the way to Cincinnati?
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
And what was the decision?
Well, basically, we got to, if I remember correctly,
And the city had to pay for that appeal?
it came out of our insurance. Our insurance carrier more or less said, guys, it's time to settle. Yeah, the case is lost. Let's cut our losses now. So we did. So now I'm of the opinion, myself, is that if a business is legal in the state of Ohio and all the rules and regulations of zoning and so on are okay and it meets the standards, then it should be permitted. Okay? Regardless of my own moral outlook on it.
Right.
Okay? Whether or not I object to it.
Right.
You know, I don't like the idea of casinos.
Right.
But on the other hand,
I'd rather see a strip club any day than a casino.
well, I'm not going to. not going to say that, but
Another thing,
yeah.
Robert, is, these women, they never know where their husbands are at, if he's at the Smiling Skull or Bronies or wherever. They would know where their husband was at on Friday night, it would be at the strip club, probably.
Okay. Can we bring this topic back to something?
Okay, all right. So we were looking at the endorsements of the messenger, the news. Do you have any comment about?
Who was our other endorsement for?
What's that?
Those three candidates, I've only heard two endorsements. Who was the other one for?
Well, he endorsed Swank.
Okay.
He endorsed Cochran, Swank, for experience, and then his number 3 was a toss-up, Costes or Rand. What's her name?
Bataan.
Yeah, she didn't do well at all.
No.
So that was
I was.
a non-endorsement. He put it in parentheses.
Oh, okay.
He said, I haven't made up my mind whether you should go with Costes or now. I don't know how he came up with that
All right,
idea.
let's take a station break.
Yeah, and I didn't pay much attention to Rand anyway. But I thought Costes was impressive.
Do you want to announce who we are?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry about that. I was looking at this piece of paper. We're discussing the fate of the recent city council elections, and Jeff Risner has far more experience in this business than I do. And he knows all 6 of the candidates, and 3 were losers and 3 were winners. And hopefully these 3 will win in the fall against some Republican challenges. And this is Jeff Risner, experienced city council man. And I am a long-time historian who went from the top down, from international relations to national relations, to state, governor, and then down to the city council. And I never heard of the city council until I was 42 years old when I ran for Congress, and I didn't know the difference between a county commission and a clerk of courts. And I finally began to be informed about the importance of local business as time went on. And I think that Jeff is correct. All politics should start out local, because I ran at age 42, and I could only run as a outside academic one time, and anybody who wanted me to run again, it was like George McGovern. George McGovern lost with about 70% of the vote, and I did 3 points worse than McGovern. I was the only guy in Congress who endorsed McGovern, and I was the only candidate who did worse than McGovern.
Well, I want you to know I voted for you in
Thank you,
72.
thank
Yes,
you. But I was voting for issues. I was voting for student rights. The war was a mistake. And if people had voted for McGovern in '72, we wouldn't be in the deep, deep doo-doo we're in now in the Middle East. And I don't think the last 3 candidates have a clue of what they want to do in the Middle East, and they don't know how to bring these wars to an end.
Right.
So
Well, that's why.
that's the advantage of
yes.
history.
Okay.
But
Now you.
foresight is not hindsight.
No, it's not. Now you mentioned in your opening remarks that city council can be a training ground for young candidates. They get experience and they move on to other. One of the problems that I think you'll notice with our city council is we're heavily weighted towards retirees or near retirees. For example, I'm 63. I'll be 64 soon, and we have other candidates who are we're older. Okay, we're not young.
Right.
Where I'm at right now, I'm not going to go into higher office. I have no desire to go anywhere beyond where I'm at.
Well, supposing you got a job in Columbus in the bureaucracy, would you go?
Oh boy, at my age, I don't know if I have the energy to do that. I won't say that I wouldn't consider it,
Okay.
but at the moment it's not on my radar.
Right.
Now, we have had some students in the past, Pat Lang, for example, who was a student at
He
the
started
time.
out young.
Yes, student, and served on city council.
And he took courses with me.
Right.
He-
He later.
He learned a little bit about politics.
Yes, he did. And
From the top.
then he became a lawyer.
Right,
Then ran for law director.
right,
Was elected, and then ran for Court of Common Pleas.
right.
Elected.
Right.
So there's an example of using what you have learned
Right.
on council as a politician to move up. And I don't use the word politician is such a derogatory term anymore, and I regret that. It's because
Well, they used to use statesman.
yeah.
Statesman had a long view of what's going to happen in the next 10, 20 years.
Right. Right.
A politician was only looking for the next election.
Well, that's good as
2 years is enough.
right. But there's a lot of issues that fall for council. Council is one of the three branches of our city government. We are what's called a statutory city. All our power comes from the Constitution of the state of Ohio by statute. Okay, the Ohio Revised Code. They say this is how you're organized. So we're organized as a council, which is the legislative body. Then we have a mayor and his staff, which is the executive branch. And then we have a legal branch, our law director, and then on up to the municipal court. So we have all these different branches. Our job on city council is the legislative part, which is to look at the laws, the ordinances, decide on what needs in terms of an ordinance. And many actions within the city require legislative approval.
Wow.
The mayor is not a dictator. The mayor cannot enter into contracts or buy large items or appropriate money or tax or do anything without explicit permission of council. For example, Halloween. Okay, we have a big Halloween party here in Athens. Now it is officially sanctioned by the city. The city is one of the sponsors. We close off the streets. We provide police protection. We allow vendors to come in and sell hot dogs and so on, and bands to play and all that. Okay, but it can only happen if council gives approval.
Right.
Council says you may close the street. Okay, and to do that, we will pass an ordinance shutting that street down for a certain length of time. Now, we have other ordinances that have to be looked at. We have a noise ordinance in this town. You can't have big, loud noises. Halloween is pretty loud.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to pass a temporary ordinance that suspends an ordinance for noise. We say, temporarily, for this time, you can make some noise, but, at the end of that time, it disappears. So all that has to come up to council for approval. Union contracts, even though they are negotiated by the city and maybe the law director or whoever else we may have as a representative for the city side to the union, the whole thing eventually, when it's done, it's not a done deal until council votes on it. If we say no, it's not done. And then everyone goes, well, what are we going to do? We got all the, well,
So you're saying the mayor is relatively weak?
No, not relatively weak. It's a strong mayor system. He does have executive authority. He does have.
He can
power.
veto city council.
He can. That's a good example. Okay, let's say, for example, Halloween.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, the council said, no, we don't want it this year. We vote all these things down. The mayor could veto that legislation. He can say, well, no, I forbid it. Well, we have an option. We can override the veto, but only if we have a supermajority, 5 out of 6.
5 out of 6.
Oh, no, or 6 out of 7. I think it's 6 out of 7.
Okay, that's all right.
We have, most of the budgeting comes out of council. We have to approve the budget for each year. The various office heads will come together and they'll we may be starting in September this year, going over the various budgets of different departments, and they'll say, well, this is how much I need, this is what I want, this is our income, blah, and so on. And the mayor, the city safety
So
service
you were
director.
talking about police, the need for police.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to have a levy to hire new police? Who's going to pay for these police?
No, not necessarily a levy. A levy is a tax, and the city council does not have the power, nor does the mayor have the power to levy a direct tax. Okay, that would be an income tax. That's what a levy would be, based a certain millage upon certain. That has to be done by the voters. Now, what council could do is that we could come out and say, folks, we're broke. We need money for the police department. We are proposing we'll call it a public safety levy that will amount to less than 1/10 of 1 mil of levy on income tax that will then be explicitly sent only to the police or maybe fire department. That's only where that money could go.
Right.
It can't go anyplace else. It'll
Right.
be in a special fund only
Right.
for them. Now, and we would propose that, and then we would pass an ordinance to place that on the ballot, probably in November, and then we would go to the Board of Elections here in Athens County and say, this is what we passed, and then they would put it on the ballot.
Right.
And then the voters would vote on it. That's what's happened with the
Fire department several times.
well,
hasn't it?
they do that, like our community center.
Right.
Okay, we had last year we had a levy. People voted on. We needed a 20-year levy to maintain the the community center and replace the old swimming pool
Right.
and build a new one,
Right.
and then the necessary funds to maintain that for the next 20 years.
Right.
It's hard to believe, but our community center's 20 years old now, you know, and that was funded by a levy. Well, that 20-year levy was expiring,
Right.
and so we had to either go out for a general income tax increase, or we go for a levy, which would be very specific only for the stated purpose of the community center and the park and pool.
Right.
So, and the voters voted on it overwhelmingly. They came out and said, yes, but as part of that thing, okay, they have very specific expectations of what's going to happen with that levy money, okay? And one of them is heated swimming pool, open year-round,
Yeah.
covered, you know. And that's what's going to happen. That's what the voters wanted. That's what they're going to get.
Right.
So council has that. We deal with all kinds of very mundane things. Our council month is divided up into two parts. On the first and third Mondays, we have what's called a regular council session. That's where we're actually introducing, reading, and passing legislation. And then the second and fourth Mondays are for where the various committees meet and discuss upcoming legislation and issues. Now, all this has to be in the open because we have these sunshine laws.
Right.
Okay, and they're very draconian.
Right.
If two council members meet to discuss some city issue and no public notice has been given and there's no minutes taken and there's no reporters present, that's a state violation. I mean, you could lose your seat. You could be kicked off council. So you have to be very careful about that. So we'll get up there and we may have people who are
So
experts.
these three new city council members are going to need a legislative seminar with you and some of the experienced people to inform them of what to do.
Well, let me say two things about that. One is we have before the new session begins, we'll have a sort of a retreat workshop. Now, it's not secret, okay? It's open to the public.
That'll be broadcast on
The newspapers will be there. Well, they could be if we wanted to, but minutes will be taken and so on. And then various officials will come up and say, this is how we would do this, is how you do that, and so on. But one of the big failures about council, and I really don't quite know how to handle it.
You don't want to step on anybody's toes.
No. Our biggest problem is we do not really have a manual. We do not have a book that says
Robert's Rules of Order.
Well, no, we got that. We are governed by Robert's Rules of Order. That's how things get done.
But we need a little more details.
But you need a manual. You need a manual that says, oh, to the new council member, this is how you introduce an ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay? Step number 1, do this. Step number 2, do that. Step number 3, bing, 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 and so on.
Now, doesn't Columbus and Cincinnati have such manuals?
Never seen one.
They do it all by...
No, don't forget, we are a statute city. Columbus is a charter city.
Okay.
So's Cleveland and Cincinnati. Those are all charter. They operate under their own rules. They wrote their own rules,
Right.
and they said this is how we're going to be governed. But we're very specific. Like the city of Columbus, even though it's huge, You got a couple million people up there. Their council's very small.
Right.
It's not a very big council at all. But under the state rules, which we're under, if at some point in the future the city of Athens crosses the magic line from 24,809, which is where we're at now, to 25,000, we have to put on, a new at-large member and a new ward. We have to divide up the city again. Instead of having 4 wards, there'll now be 5.
I see.
So they pretty much dictate how the council will expand as the population grows. And we're going to hit 25,000 before too much longer. So we'll have to be dividing things up.
Well, what city would you compare Athens to?
I don't know, Oxford, maybe?
Okay.
that
Now, do they have a manual?
Never seen it. Haven't. It's not online. I know that.
Okay.
If there is one. I think it's sort of like one of these things where you're just sort of thrown out in the middle of the water and you swim, or you drown, one or the other.
You don't want to draft a manual yourself.
Oh, I don't have responsibility. I'd have to appoint an ad hoc committee and take maybe 9 months to do it.
I see.
If I did something like that. Right now, since January, I was appointed chair of the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Right.
And that's probably the busiest committee of
Right.
them all, because I'm dealing with all the money coming in and
Right.
personnel issues and so on.
Right.
So that really takes up a lot of my time.
Yeah.
One of the things that people don't realize about city council is, okay, you see them, we meet on Monday nights and we're there from say 7 to 9. And you think, oh my gosh, it's only at 2 hours a week.
But you got to do all that paperwork.
That's not counting, okay, I'm on 2 other committees.
Yeah.
I'm on finance and personnel and development.
Right.
Okay, they have to meet.
Right.
And sometimes we'll meet during the week. We'll have to call a special session.
Right.
And we have to give the public notice, and we say we're going to meet in the front conference room between 10 and 12, and the Post will send a reporter, and the A News will have someone there, and we'll have the clerk of council taking the minutes. It's all out in the open, and we'll be discussing various topics like trash cans and single stream collection and all those issues that that you have to gather all this information together before you can write an ordinance.
I see.
It's nothing's done in a vacuum.
Right.
There's a lot of background work you've got to find.
Right.
And you're very busy.
Okay.
I'm almost toying with the idea that if and when Athens sort of crosses over 25,000, they probably should make council full-time. Let's just bite the bullet and do it. Because here's the problem I'm seeing, and it goes back to what I was talking about. We have a lot of people my age, semi-retired or retired, and the reason we're on council is because, one, we don't need the income because you're not paid very much. You're getting no benefits. There's no health insurance or anything like that. Now, if I'm a young person, say in my late 20s or 30s, I have a family. I need a job. I can't do this part-time.
Right.
I'm just too busy making a living. And we're losing a lot of talent out there. There's a lot of good people out there, young people, full of fire and passion, and they want to do good things, and they have great ideas, and they've come out of school, and they have the knowledge. They're up to date, and they look at something like council, and they go, well, that doesn't pay anything. $490 a month
Right.
for all this. And no benefits other than I get to park in the parking garage, just doesn't attract people.
Yeah.
And it's an issue we're going to have to tackle sooner or later. I don't know if it'll be during any of my terms or not, but
Okay.
it's something that should be looked at.
Okay.
Mayor's full time, police chief's full time, fire chief's full time. No one would dispute that they should be.
Okay.
But on the other hand, look, how often do we have a fire in town?
Mm-hmm.
Not that often, do we? But we have a full-time fireman,
Okay.
full-time fire. And for a very good reason. You don't know when the fire is going to happen, and you don't want to have to depend on calling in the volunteers.
Right.
It should be full-time, and they should be paid what they're worth. And I think the same thing should be, we're going to have to look at that at council sometime.
Okay.
But anyway, that's
Well,
for the future.
let us get back here to these questions I had here.
Okay.
We already explained why Canterbury lost. I would like to say something about this League of Women Voters.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find any information from this? The voter, is this helpful to the voter? Or is this just irrelevant?
No, I don't think it's irrelevant. I think in a general term, it gives you a foundation to build an opinion on.
Right.
But it shouldn't be taken as, aha, I see from this one paragraph what this person is like. What it should be,
Right.
what it should do is get you to the point where you pick up your phone and you call them up.
That's what it should do.
It should spark your interest.
Right.
Okay. And I think that's the point of the league. It's to get that out there.
Well, they ask 5 questions. I'll just read this first question. I think the first question is helpful. What is your education and experience? And that determined me to vote for Costes because I saw a history major. I said, well, okay, looks like he's well informed. So that's how I decided to vote for an unknown.
Right. You should have picked up the phone and called him right then and there.
Well, I didn't want to spend that much time on it.
Okay.
So education and experience, that's a very good question. And then the second question was, should Athens city speed up its efficiency for city building? Now, that seemed to me about energy efficiency. And most everybody said yes, but they were very vague on how they would do that.
Right.
I really couldn't learn much from that,
That's kind of
except that solar and wind were probably good, but they weren't too specific. Now, Costes said he wants better business, and he wants parking, and he wants, so he was a little bit more concrete. And then the third question is, what is your passionate plan for the future? And they all said energy, efficiency. And Karansky said she was a little bit vague. Development, city initiatives. Okay, I was more influenced by Costes. Jennifer said Southeast Ohio. She was for Southeast Ohio and educational opportunities. A little bit vague. And Karansky said, she gave a very good answer on that. Her passions were enjoy walking in the city, food, we need better films, music, libraries, all of these. City was great. I thought she had a good answer.
That's a good passion. Yeah.
So that's how I learned from that, by reading that carefully.
Right.
And so you didn't learn too much because you could pick up the phone and you knew all of these candidates ahead, really.
Pretty much. Well,
yeah.
I've worked with Jennifer. I've known Joan for a long
Right.
time. And
Okay, there was one, letters the editor, there was one kind of bitter Republican.
well, not surprising.
Costes won the overall. He got 11 supporters by writing letters to the editor, and that helped him get his name out there.
Right.
There was one Republican who just denounced all liberals, and I don't know. He's very bitter. I thought his letter was a waste of time because there was no Republican being on this race.
No, no.
He should have waited until November.
Right.
But I don't think he read carefully. He just said the candidates are misleading. The Democratic Committee members are misleading. He's from Amesville.
Well, that says a lot.
And then we had a letter on the city services. The Messenger had this. The children's services. They were generally less, they don't endorse candidates.
No, no. I haven't
So
seen it.
you couldn't get too much information from them. So they encouraged city children's services.
Right. Frankly, I don't know how much good
letters the editor help?
editorial endorsements do anymore
Right.
in this day of the internet and Twitter and
Okay.
Hey, Robert, we have 2 minutes.
Well, I guess we're
2 minutes warning.
just about the end. I might say that endorsements from the Athens News, they endorsed the levy,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped win. And then people put out names of why it won.
Mm-hmm.
They had to pay their own thing.
Oh,
But-
okay.
Okay, so do you want to say anything that we haven't covered in this last 2 minutes?
Well, other than council has a lot of issues on the table, and we'll be dealing with all of them with our current membership, and then next year we'll have some new ones.
Right.
And
Well, I
continue
will
on.
summarize this by saying I recommend to students that you vote in national elections and in local elections, and you're educated first by the president, then the Senate, and then you get down to the city council as a matter of practicality. But the way you win is just reverse of that. Start out of the city council.
Right.
If you want
Start
to be a
local
winner.
and work up.
And my final conclusion is we got to keep the debate going on national, international, and local level. And debate is the oxygen of democracy. Thank you
Absolutely.
for coming.
It's always a pleasure.